Another early silver worker was Annie Quam Gasper, who was known for her channel inlay. And she actually created and became known for two designs that she invented herself. One she called the hummingbird design, that was really beautiful, that was shaped like a kind of two J shapes that fit within each other that you see in her jewelry designs. And another one called a spider web design that often was done with necklaces, and each pendant had a little open hole, and then the spider web radiated out from there. And so she was one of the first to use that design. She was especially known for her channel work and her petit point. The petit point consists of small stones that are arranged in clusters. But she also, with her channel work, could make very interesting pieces, such as these earrings that she made that are shaped like stagecoaches, and they actually have little wheels that roll on the bottom. So she was very creative and inventive, and a long line of her family has continued in the jewelry working business. And then finally we have jewelers like Frank Bassett, who is very well known for his inlay and also his channel work. And Bassett was interesting. He and Dan Simplicio very often would produce jewelry that the designs would hark back to prehistoric designs. And in this particular case, he's actually made a pair of earrings in the shape of an Acoma pot using channel inlay. Most of these techniques became popular in the 1940s, but the interesting thing about C.G. Wallace's collection is that many of these examples go back into the 1920s and 1930s, and so they're some of the earliest documented examples of jewelry that has ever been put together. And so the collection that is here at the Heard Museum consists of about 500 pieces. The story behind how the Heard acquired this collection is interesting also. In the 1970s, of course, Wallace was very proud of his collection, and he showed it off to anybody who would show up at his office down at the De Anza Motor Lodge in Albuquerque. He would show off his collection, and in the early 70s, he decided it was time to catalog. And so he brought in his secretary, and they had visits from numerous artists who were still acquainted with the Wallaces, who provided attribution information. And then in 1975, they worked out an arrangement with Sotheby Park Burnett to auction the majority of the collection, but the Heard was able to select about 500 pieces from the collection. And so many of the examples that they selected were the finest examples, and in many cases the only example of a certain style. And so the important thing about this collection is that it's so well documented as to date and maker, and that in many cases you have extra provenance in the way of numbers, of price codes that are scratched into the pieces, of signatures on the back that indicate that they are from C.G. Wallace's own private collection, as opposed to shop inventory. And so each piece in the collection is extremely unique, tells a different story. And one more artist that I want to talk about also is, again, Leo Poblano's use in mosaic inlay, which is also still popular today. And this is a Chalico piece that is done in mosaic inlay, and it's really beautiful. And the thing that I think distinguishes Leo Poblano from other mosaic artists is that he discovered this ability to work in a relief kind of effect. Part of this he learned from his wife, Daisy Huey, who was a Hopi potter and a jeweler and attended l'École des Beaux-Arts. And so when she attended this school, she learned the techniques of bas-relief, brought it to Zuni, and she taught Leo the basics in doing this. And so a lot of the work that Leo Poblano and these other artists did in the 1940s and the 1950s has carried over into the contemporary work coming from Zuni Pueblo. And so people like Veronica Poblano are still doing carvings, still doing relief work, still doing nugget work, working in non-traditional materials such as ivory and lapis and gold, other materials like these. And so the descendants of these original artists are still working today. It's a live tradition, and it continues. So the C.G. Wallace is very important as kind of a time capsule, a documentation of the finest Zuni jewelry and silver work and lapidary work of the 20th century, and especially between the 1930s and the 1950s. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the work also of Teddy Wayaki, because he was such an interesting carver. He was working at the same time as Likia. He's also an ancestor of Veronica Poblano, and so she was familiar with the work of both of them. She told us a lot about Teddy Wayaki's work, including the fact that his fetish carving was often a little bit blockier than Likia's, and so if you look at these two examples, you can see that Teddy's is very kind of blocky, but it has kind of a rough texture and very much like you would expect a lizard to be, whereas Likia's work is very rounded and organic and kind of undulating. So they both have two very different personalities in the works that they create. This one is interesting because it connects to the story of C.G. Wallace and how he procured materials. Coral, for example, he procured as early as the late 20s, but was probably getting coral in the mid-30s in mass quantities into Zuni Pueblo. And turquoise, he was known for having the very best and largest turquoise. He would use the large pieces, the softer grades of turquoise for carving. And this particular example shows a big chunk of black in there, and that's indicative of the black matrix turquoise that you often see in the carving projects that were done by Likia and Teddy Wayaki, and also Leo Poblano. So very often you can tell who the artist is by the different grades and the different kinds of large chunk turquoise that they used.